Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, the heart of Katmai, from bears to blast craters, presented by Annie Van Dinther and Sean Eggleston. Annie is NatHab's Guide Development Director, leading trips for us since 1999, and Sean, who has been guiding for NatHab in North America since 2018, is taking a break from fighting Colorado's wildfires to present for us. Thanks for being with us today. I'm going to hand things off to you, Annie.
Thank you so much, Kendall. Really appreciate your help with this. And thank you, everyone who's tuning in. We're so happy that you're joining us each day for these wonderful presentations. And I really want to thank Sean for joining me today on this presentation. We're talking about the Heart of Katmai, and it's a series that we've been doing now for a few weeks. We talked about the Heart of India, we talked about the Heart of the Amazon and Churchill last week. All of these are asking this question of what makes a place, and how can we, to the best of our abilities, help you go to that place for a little while today. Sean, I'm so excited that you're here to join us. You're going to be our guide for the day. Just want to let you introduce yourself a little further.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Annie. I'm glad to be home. I got home yesterday and got a shower, and I'm glad to be here and talk with all you today. My name's Sean Eggleston. I live down here in Colorado. I've been in Colorado all my life as a native, and guiding for NatHab is obviously my big passion. And but I have life outside of that. I am a firefighter here in Greeley, Colorado, structural firefighter, and I also go out on the forest fires. And unfortunately, right now, Colorado is really being hit hard. And so I've been working in that area recently. And you can see in that top left, I also enjoy flying in airplanes. So that's kind of my basis here. And glad to be on with you guys. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you, Sean. You have been fighting these fires now for the past 2 weeks, and you literally just got back last night. So we are really appreciative that you would use any energy you have left after that big of an experience helping others and helping our planet to join us here. So thank you. We're going to talk about a place today that is a small part of Alaska. It feels huge in many ways, but it is a small part. First, let's talk about the size of Alaska. It's something that we want to take a brief minute to hit on, because sometimes people who don't live here, even some of us who live here, forget how incredibly huge this state is. Over 700,000 square miles, and about the same amount of people to match that size. So it is not a little place, and we are going today to travel onto what is called the peninsula, and we're going to head over there to Katmai. So let's take a look here now at precisely where Katmai is relative to the rest of the state. You can see this little pin mark here that says Brooks Falls. That, some of you maybe heard of Brooks. That is part of Katmai National Park. We're not going to go to Brooks today. We'll have to save that for another time. But those characters that we do see at Brooks may show up. Once you kind of zoom in to see where we are on the peninsula there, you can hop over to the map on the right and see where Katmai National Park is compared to, say, Lake Clark and Homer and that kind of thing. So hopefully that gives you a little perspective as to where we're traveling to today.
Yeah, Annie, the size is just mind-boggling. And really, when we're in Katmai, and we're going to try to share that with you guys today, just how immense it is and how large of an area it is. But it's really just a small part of Alaska, and but in my view, probably the best part.
Okay, so before we talk about the obvious heart of Katmai, which is the bears, and that's near and dear to both of our hearts, we do need to talk a little bit about how Katmai National Park actually even came to be. It wasn't for the bears. So this park was actually developed in response to a huge volcanic eruption that happened in 1912 called Novarupta. And this eruption was absolutely gigantic. There were people in Seattle who were feeling the ash from this eruption. It said that there was, what was it in Kodiak? 18 inches of
No,
ash.
up to 18 feet of ash in Kodiak.
Whoa.
Right across the way.
Wow. So an enormous amount of ash fell on the state. Obviously, I didn't live in Homer 100 or some years ago, but if I had, I'm sure we would have also been covered in it here. I've experienced a few volcanoes erupting with a tiny dusting, but this was a whole different thing. So after that eruption, because it was so big, National Geographic Society went up to Alaska to explore this huge eruption and figure out what was going on. You can see here that Novarupta was so large, and compared to what a lot of Americans think of as Mount St. Helens. Sean, can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, in our generation, really what we refer back to as far as a large eruption is Mount St. Helens. And most all of us felt the effects in one way or another, whether you were in the Northwest and saw a lot of ash on your homes and cars, or all across America, we saw the ash cloud and felt that. But as you can see from this slide, Mount St. Helens was nothing in compared to Novarupta. 3 cubic miles of earth was put into the sky. So it was felt around the world, but it was all a little before our time, I think.
Yeah, definitely before our time. There was a village located near the eruption, and they were able to escape and leave. And that's because prior to the eruption, there were what it was said to be is more than usual number of earthquakes happening. So we feel earthquakes here all the time in Alaska. Honestly, they don't kind of even phase us usually, hopefully. But that particular week, the people who lived in that area were feeling them, you know, moment after moment, hour after hour. They were sort of building up, and that gave people a chance to actually evacuate before the mountain blew, which is a very good thing. Now, obviously, this is incredible to see, but today you see more of what's left over ecologically speaking, rather than, you know, actually the ash. So the landscape is a bit different in Katmai. You tend to see different foliage and less foliage, sometimes some landslides, that kind of thing. But in general, you don't see like the actual ash of it in the areas where we go.
No, it's we'll see when we look at our pictures today, we'll see those ash pockets that have been there ever since 1912. Yeah, it's a very changed place over those little over 100 years ago. I want to go back a couple slides to when you start talking about Geographic, going National Geographic going in and finding this place. If you guys, I believe everyone can see my pointer. This area where my pointer is down here, that's called Geographic Bay now. And that's where they went in and started studying this just a few years after the eruption, and really noticed what a beautiful and a wonderful place it is. And from there, it became actually our first national park. No, that was Yellowstone, but it was in 1918 it became our national park.
It's definitely an incredible area, and we do love to check out features from that eruption, but really that's not why we go to Katmai today, and it's not even why Katmai is famous today, at least, right? I mean, people know about this history, but it is by far and away the bears that actually bring us to this place. And Sean, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're from Colorado. So how did you end up coming up here to see these creatures?
Well, I heard about a place called McNeil River Sanctuary, and found out that you had to win the lottery to go into this place, and which is still true. Every March, people put in an application and get a lottery ticket. And so in, I believe it was 2007, I think, I applied for the lottery and I won the lottery, which is pretty awesome. And in my mind, was better than winning the Powerball. So this picture you see here was my first time in Katmai at the McNeil River Sanctuary. And it's kind of funny, I got that big lens there and couldn't even use it at the moment. This little cub walked up, and if you see down in the lower right picture there, there's a rock. And that cub walked up, started playing with that rock like he wanted to play with me. And that's where it all started. That's where my heart just fell out of my chest. And so for 14 years, I've continued to go up. Moving along, I went into McNeil River Sanctuary several times and actually got to help build the guidebook there, and studied and worked under two different people, Tom Griffin, who has been the manager of McNeil River Sanctuary for over 20 years now, and also where I met Drew Hamilton, who was also a NetHab guide. And so I spent a lot of time in McNeil River Sanctuary and then along the Katmai coast. Got to know Drew, and Drew, with the help of you, Annie, it got me into natural habitat adventures. And this is the first day I met the mighty Ursus, and traveled out, honored to guide clients.
Wow, that's very cool. I think of McNeil in kind of a different way. That's state managed land that is right up next to the federal, the national park there, as you can see here. But of course, the bears don't care about those boundaries, right? Those are human made lines and whatnot. I hear about McNeil because my husband goes there for work, and he goes to set up the bear cams and that kind of thing. And so I sort of think of it as a different place in that sense. I myself have never gotten to go and see the bears there. I have not had a chance to put in for the lottery. I'm usually guiding during the summer, and so I can't really put in a like I'll go whenever. But it is a very special place, and Joe keeps telling me that even though I've been to these other places with bears, I need to see that area.
That's where
even if I do see, it's where you met Joe. That's right. That's also where Joe met Drew.
Yeah.
I think we could probably either blame him or thank him for both of you coming our way. He came home from McNeil one year and said, you've got to hire this guy. He's just fantastic. He was talking about Drew, and it took me a while because I was like, you fish and game guys are a little boring. I'm not sure that's going to be a match. Then Drew came over for dinner, and with moments I was calling the vice president of our company and saying, we got to hire this guy. And then of course that led to you. So this area, as I mentioned, the bears don't care about these lines. So when you go to Katmai National Park, which you can do with us, you're seeing bears that are also from the McNeil area. Tell us more about these bears, Sean.
Well, they're amazing in so many different ways, and I'm going to try to show you that in a lot of ways today. But yeah, talking about just the mere traveling, you see up here where McNeil River Sanctuary is, and you can see the distance in that red box there of where we visit on the Katmai National Park off of the boat. And we have seen bears that were in McNeil travel all the way down that coast. We're talking, 50, 60 miles. And then when we're in those bays, we may see a bear, I recognize them by a scar or a characteristic of some sort. And then we decide to go to the next bay down, and we see them over there the very next day. And if you see these mountains that they have to cross, it's just amazing. Their resilience is truly inspiring. And this is why we work so hard to protect this area, because the bears don't know these lines, and but they do travel, and we see them in all different places.
So do you remember the first time that you ever saw a brown bear, and what was that feeling like as we look at these photos of these beautiful bears? What was that like for you?
So I was flying in on a bush plane, we'll talk about, and Jose was the pilot, great guy there in Homer, you know him. And he pointed down. I thought he was pointing at the area we were going to land. And I looked down there, just glancing, seeing, oh, we're lining up to land. And then I saw brown dots. And my forehead, hit the window. And I've had experience with large mammals down here in Colorado. And that's what drew me to go see these guys, the biggest of them. But seeing those guys just below the plane as I was coming in for a landing was, I thought I was going to be walking for miles to see them, not them greeting me like Tattoo on the island show. So yeah, it was, and then to get off the boat or get off the plane and start walking and see them in that proximity was truly inspiring.
So you said you imagined that you had to walk to these bears. You do sometimes need to go some distance, but just in terms of getting there, we should probably tell folks that it was that last year. Time is a whole new thing, I feel like, in 2020, but I believe it was last year that I had the opportunity to go over and train with you. So normally I guide some trips that go to Brooks, I guide polar bear trips, I had all kinds of experience with bears in Southeast and all over, but I hadn't ever guided from the boat. And so I needed to go and be trained, because I would be a great obvious backup if something ever happened to one of our guides living right here in Homer. It made a lot of sense. And I had the privilege of having you as my guide. I remember flying over, great sense of anticipation. It was just thrilling to think that we were going to this place that in a way feels like I should know it. It's so close to my home as the crow flies, but yet it feels like a whole different planet when you get over there.
It really does, and that's where the whole adventure starts, is getting on that plane. Very few people in the world actually ever get to fly on a float plane, and these Alaskan pilots are the best. They're the best of the best, and they fly into these locations. You can see in this picture what these lakes that they land on look like from below or above. But that's where the true adventure starts, is getting on these really, really neat float planes. And you can see by this is where you start to see the size that you're coming in. You come in at a higher altitude and you're looking down, you don't realize the size until that plane is just a speck on the side of that mountain as you're coming in to land. Yeah, the whole adventure starts right there, and it really kind of kicks off that sense of wilderness, because that's, no other planes can get in like this. The only other way into this place is by boat, which is quite the ride also. So the true wilderness sense really kicks in immediately when you step onto that plane.
So when you get to this area and we talk about this idea of the heart of a place, some of the guides said that it's how the air feels when you get off the plane. I feel that when I return to Alaska here, when I come from Baja, I feel like I'm moving through glue compared to that dry desert air. For me, though, it is the smell. It is the smell of pushki here in Homer that immediately makes me know that I'm here in Homer. Or in Mexico, there's just a smell to the food and the pavement and all. There's a lot of smells there. For you, what is the thing that lets you know you're in really any place, but specifically this place? How do you know you've landed?
There's a couple of things right off the bat through the senses. I hear the eagles and I hear the gulls right away, usually. And if it's, during the salmon run, I can smell the salmon immediately. We're talking about millions of fish, and yeah, they're underwater, but I smell them, and of course, so do the bears. But really, truly, it's the lack of sense when I land. It's the vastness. It's the fact that I can stand on that boat or that plane, do a 360, not see another human, not see another man-made thing whatsoever. It is completely separate. You put everything behind you that you leave at home and really separate yourself, and you can't define wilderness any better than this. You land, you step foot, and you are in the middle of an uninhabited place. So it's that lack of everything that's the norm, and then this over immense feeling of everything that you don't get to see every day.
That's really interesting. You know, I can tell, I get what you're saying. But I think I learned as we were preparing for this and we talked about this that I might take that a little bit for granted. Here in Homer, to step out into wilderness, we just don't have to go very far. So it's pretty quick that we can be in this, you know, vast place. I have to tell you though, I think you're onto something with Katmai because it is a different thing than in other places in Alaska. There's no roads in this area, and I'm forgetting the exact details now, but if anyone wants to look this up, one of the ways we define wilderness is how far you are from a road system and how far you can be at any given point in time from a road system. So if you look that up for the lower 48, you can't go very many places in the lower 48 and not be pretty close to a road. But here in Katmai, you got a lot of distance between you and the next road.
Yeah, I believe it's, don't quote me on this, I believe it's 13 miles in the lower 48, less than a mile in Europe, but in Alaska, it's hundreds of miles. So that's really, it's neat to hear the picture of John. John has been guiding for 30, 40 years in Katmai. And because of the remoteness, because of the difficulty that it can for normal people to get in there, it's really neat that there's a small group of people, just a handful of people that I can almost list, that truly know the area. It's the pilots that get you in, and it's these boat captains that can move you about on the Katmai coast. We've named that island behind him in that picture after John, because well, he likes that island, he loves that island, and because he's been there for 30, 40 years. And we'll talk about the tides a little, how they rise and fall. It's for him to navigate during those tides and keep everyone safe is amazing. So the people over there that we use and that help us with this adventure are truly special people that have made this the place that it is.
It's an interesting way of thinking about a place, because when we do think of, say, India, and we talk about the people being part of what makes that place, we're talking about a larger group of people, right? We're talking about a culture of those people. There's a culture in Katmai, though. When I landed on that boat with you, I believe just within a few hours, we went out to see bears, if memory serves, and we ran into a couple other guides. And I quickly figured out, you know everybody. If you do see someone out there, which you don't every time you go out at all, but if you do see someone, your guide knows them. And as you said, it's that small community that has really shaped the way things operate out there. Oh, this picture is gorgeous. You know I have a thing for black and white bears, right? That is my absolute favorite way to photograph and to look at them. I think this picture says it all, Sean.
It is, and when I'm talking about that vastness, here's a statistic that will just blow your mind. When you set foot in Katmai, you're the minority. There are more bears there than humans. There are more bears there than humans have ever been there. We take a small group of 8 people. We have 3 crew members on the boat and myself. We are the minority, and the bears outnumber us I don't know how many fold. So between that and the fact that I mentioned you can do a 360 spin and not see anything else man-made of any type, the adventure has started.
You know, I gotta say, I don't often get afraid of wild places. You know, I've been to some that kind of rocked my world and made, you know, brought me to the edge. But I don't typically kind of have nervousness when I'm either around animals or in the wilderness. Certainly here, I hike all the time in bear country. There was a bear the other day by my daughter's school right in town. So, you know, they say at Fish and Game, when do you go into bear country? And it's anytime you're outside here, you're in bear country, even if you're in the heart of Anchorage. So I don't often get afraid. And I did have a lot of experience with bears before I went to Katmai. But that was mostly experience in Brooks, where there's this system where you're walking on a trail, there's rangers, you know, there's even a place to go get lunch. It's a magical place, but it's quite regulated compared to what you're seeing here in Katmai. And I gotta say, I was nervous. I was like, how do these guys do this? I know the power of brown bears. I know that they fight sometimes and that they compete for resources. And I was really curious, and I have to say, a little bit afraid to know if I would have those skills that it takes to move so closely on the ground with such big animals. Did you have that when you started?
If I did, I don't remember it. I've always, it's, I guess, one of a quality I have is remaining calm and in situations, and somehow I made a connection with the bears rather quickly, which was wonderful. And to have that peace around 1,000-pound bear is truly magical. And that's what I try to give to our friends that come out there with us, to be calm and to be at peace and to be able to experience that power, that remoteness where we don't have help anytime quickly, but to be able to feel the safety and have the confidence that their NatHab guide is there to take care of them. And that's because our NatHab guides have been out there for years and years, and our true passion is watching the behavior of these bears and reading them and giving them, this is their home. So we are just visitors in their home. And having that those understandings really help us to give that to you guys.
You know, it's interesting because I think I felt this from you and hopefully learned how to do it myself. I still need a bit more training out there, but I felt this from you the instant that I was on the boat. I mean, literally the instant that I was on the boat. There was something about the way that you guide that you didn't tell us to be calm. You know better than to tell a group of people. You know, you tell somebody to be calm and they get like nervous, right? But you just were calm yourself. You had this way of sort of bringing the energy down, and not in like a depressive way, but just in like, okay. It almost felt like I'd just done a yoga class or something. And I became very curious about how your guiding style could do that. I know Drew can do that as well, and a few other bear guides, Teresa, were just able to sort of bring the energy down. And I think it's a pretty fascinating way of understanding where we belong next to these animals. Just as you said, we're a guest. And so when we're calm and we behave in that predictable manner, then we're just another thing in their area, but not something for them to be frightened of.
Yeah, when I do tell people to watch me as an example and to maybe mimic, you know, my attitude or behavior. What I don't tell them is I've learned so much from these bears, I'm mimicking their behavior. These bears love to be calm, they love to relax, I have studied for 14 years on how to take a bear nap because they've given me the example. So what I've come from, or what I've been given from these bears is a lot of lessons, life lessons. And one of that is just how relaxed they are. They know when they need to be powerful. They know when they need to defend or hunt or eat or sleep. And there's a time for everything, and that's what I try to mimic.
They've got those instincts, that's for sure, right? That maybe we as humans have gotten a little bit removed from. I was also struck when I went there with you about how close we got to the bears, and how, as you said, when you got off that plane, there they were, just right there with you. It's amazing to me that you can be so close, and yet there's this vastness. There's some of those bays that you go into that are just wide open, and you can see these kind of speckled dots along the landscape for quite a while. And then you get to this, where you're right there in it.
Yeah, it's a special place because of that proximity. It's very, very intimate. And the reason we're able to do that again is because the guides have been studying their behavior. We have the utmost respect and love for these bears, so we in no way change their behavior. And really, truly, what allows this is they have bigger things going on in their life. That mother and cub are concerned about that big bear that's going to roll in and grab some fish. The subadults, which are kind of teenagers, they act like the teenagers we know and love, and are skittish and don't know, have all the answers to life yet. So the dynamic between these bears is constant, and they're doing risk assessment just like we do. They're feeding their family, they're feeding their bellies, they're taking their naps, and they're protecting themselves, not from us, because they know over all these years that we're not there to hurt them in any way. They're protecting themselves from the other bears. So because of that dynamic between the bears, they know that, oh, there's those 8 people. I swear they think their language is click, click, click on the camera. We don't talk a whole lot when they're right next to us. So they allow us to be there and observe us and observe them while they deal with what's important in their life.
Sometimes I feel like it's like who's watching whom here, because they do seem to be so close and sometimes a bit curious, but like you've said, in general, they're there for the fish, and we can sit and watch them. Do you see a change in your clients? The people, I know you're very passionate about the experience that you share. Do you see a change in them when they get this kind of intimate wilderness experience?
It's probably one of the biggest parts of my job satisfaction. To watch these people, they may get off the plane a little nervous, excited, and the next thing they know, within an hour or two after we do some housekeeping, they're sitting next to a bear. And literally, I've seen, old veterans that have really been through everything in the Korea War or something like that. And they're sitting there, and these tough old guys are crying, tears running down their cheeks. To be able to experience that and to watch them, that's really cool for me to be able to facilitate that movement in them. But the smiles, the stories, the laughter, and the tears, it doesn't get any better. It happens every trip. If I could put down $100 and say I'll have you crying in 2 days, those guys would bet against me, and then they would lose.
It is definitely quite the experience. And I think that in a way, when we talk about the heart of a place, yes, it's these these animals that are there in this ecosystem, but there is this thing that is happening in Katmai every summer where people are learning, could I dare say, their place in the circle of things, that they're kind of learning maybe to be a bit more humble about being next to wildlife. And then of course there's pure joy, like this photograph here.
Yeah, the qualities you can come away from, it humbles me every time I'm next to those guys in so many different ways. To put everything else in life behind you and be just with them, it's truly a spiritual experience. At times it's very therapeutic for me. And then my job satisfaction is through the roof. Yeah, this little guy, I call this photo side salad. Everyone that comes up, they don't realize just how much sedge these big monster brown bears eat. But they eat this sedge, it's full of protein all day long. And so I call this one side salad. He was such a cute guy. He stood on his hind legs like that, and their mothers communicate with them with the popping of their lips. And he was eating and he looked at me and popped at me like I'm a big bad 4-foot tall bear. Just cutest little thing. And I kind of laughed. His mom was crossing the river and she looked back at him and popped, and he was humbled really quickly. And, oh, I'm not in charge, mom is, and had to follow her across the river. Those kind of behaviors, just you'll never forget.
Do you have a favorite bear?
I did. Earlier you saw, well, I have two. I had Fozzie. He was a wonderful guy that everyone joked he wanted to sit by me, which, you know, was kind of a joke because I always wanted to sit by him. Then I'm going to advance since you asked a question here. This is a famous among the guides female. We call her Waterfalls, and she's amazing in so many different ways. I told my wife about her, or I just told stories. And my wife, you know, she doesn't get jealous, but if she did get jealous, she'd be jealous over Waterfalls. And believe it or not, I was up there a few years ago with her, and Tom said, "Hey, Sean, look who's coming up the river." And I looked, she was 100 yards away, and I knew it was her right away. And Annette knew that was my other girlfriend at the time. So yeah, you have some favorite ones. Again, that all goes back to watching their behavior and watching their personalities. She was so neat in how she trained her cubs and how she played with them, and how she bossed some of the big boys around. Yeah, I got a favorite or two.
So tell us about this picture here.
Huge female. She's 600-700 pounds. Very, very big girl. And she just came down the sandy beach, sat down right in front of us, these cubs. It's neat to watch how she's teaching them. They were hesitant, standing on their legs like, oh, look, that guy is right there. But she needs to teach that habituation of that these people are of no harm. And once she calmed them down, they relaxed a little. It reminds me of the band Kiss. So.
You know, I think it's pretty amazing. A brown bear mother, one of the things that I loved to watch about their mothering is there's a perception out there, right? That you know, I think there's all kinds of t-shirts even now that say mama bear, and sort of like you don't mess with a mama bear. That's certainly true. But at the same time, I was amazed to witness all the different behaviors and see some of them aren't really that good at moms. Like some of them are distracted by food and, you know, mating. They'd rather pay attention to that than their cubs. Others are, you know, somewhere in between. And I think just like all the different mothers you know in your life, there's different degrees of protection and interest in being a mother even. And I found that really fascinating as far as bear behavior goes.
Yeah, definitely different personalities. I love this photo. Teaching the little cub how to get these salmon, and it's neat to also see, you know, maybe this mother had just one cub, so she had to play, she had to wrestle with it, she had to teach it how to defend itself and fight, and that's neat. They don't do that as much when they're have siblings in their when they're born. So the mothers that truly are mama bears, don't mess with them. I've seen some you know, mama bears that weigh 300-400 pounds less than this big boy, and they'll defend. So I know you're a mama bear at times with your kids, but it's neat. They're just how patient they are, how resilient they are, and again, lessons for us to take home when we leave. This is the big boy. He's over 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
They'll walk right by you and say hi, and moving, very moving. As
Incredible shot. Yeah, tell us about this one.
This guy, he's probably 4 years old, just separated from mom a year or so. We called him Clifford the Dog because I don't know if you remember those books. He had these really long legs, and his hair was a little reddish and gangly, and you know, kind of that puberty guy. Just didn't know what to do, but was very comfortable with us. His mother was probably one that we knew well, and so she taught him that. But yeah, watching the different personalities, it never ends, and then I'm always excited. I can't wait to get back next year and see what Clifford, how much weight he's put on and how big he is, and did he figure out the fishing better? And so if you come out once with us, you got to go back the next year and answer those questions.
I think that's one of the most incredible things about our jobs is that even though we may go to the same place over and over again, we're never going to see the same thing over and over again. It's different every time, and certainly with animal behavior, we just don't get sick of that. This is an iconic photo that I believe is from Brooks. Is that correct?
No, this is actually Falls in McNeil.
This, it looks like you're right at the edge of that place where the bears stand at Brooks Falls to try to get that, you know, the salmon jumping into the mouth. So it looks like this bear is waiting for a salmon. Is that correct?
Yeah, I call this photo patience, and I've mentioned it a few times. Their skills, their patience. It's again a teaching moment. If we think about the things that we complain about, and you know, our fast food isn't quick enough, that kind of thing. Again, these guys are truly humbling, and their perseverance, their resilience, in order to stay alive, to grow, and be a part of this community is just, it's inspiring. I come away from this place a better man every time, because I like to see these. It reminds me of these qualities that I need to have, and so these guys are truly the heart of Katmai, and I try to take that into my heart, and I watch our visitors do the same, and I think everyone agrees when they leave. They're also a better person just because of getting to watch this.
They certainly are phenomenal animals. We've done this thing that happens where we've got a few more minutes, and then we're getting towards the top of the hour. So how about we close out with this story that we've got about the intertidal zone here, and then we'll open it up to questions. How does that sound, Sean?
Sounds good. This was a unique experience. It was really cool, and it was great that I had you with me. We happened to be out there very, very low tide. These tides are 18, 20 feet tides. This one was really low, and it exposed us to a whole nother life. The bears are the heart, but it's a community of life that just, between the salmon, these sea stars, the birds, all of it. And you were there to help us. Tell me about it.
You know, this was interesting because, as we said, you go there for the bears, right? But the boat's in the ocean. So you're in the intertidal zone. There are going to be marine creatures. And this extra low tide, which I feel like we could have a whole webinar just on tides, but as you said, exposed some incredible sea stars, all of these different mussels, and the bladder wrack. I mean, there's so many different things here that we could talk about, and we did that day. Tide pooling is a big part of who we are here in Alaska, at least coastal Alaska, because we do have such big tides. It's just part of us. So this is actually my daughter across the bay over here with her classroom. It's something that every, I believe it's the 4th grade class does. They go across the bay and they learn about our marine environment because it's such a critically important place. I love the sea stars personally, but there's a few others that are just super fun to photograph. So if anyone does get to come visit me up here in Homer, I will for sure be taking them tide pooling.
That's neat, and I love this shot. You've told me the stories about your kids. Got to play with your kids and fish with your kids, and it's so important to me. That's the one thing I charge on our guests is go home, teach your grandchildren, teach your children what you got to experience and just how special of a place this is. Tell them about the true heart of Katmai, because they're our future and they're going to take care of this place after you and me. So to see the kids, and to tell you the truth, if I could say we're only taking guests that are 8 to 14 years old, I would love that. But they don't have the permission slip signed yet.
All right, well, let's take one more look at a beautiful bear here, and then we will open it up to some questions. This picture here reminds me that we could also do a whole webinar on salmon, because of course we can't understand the heart of Katmai without really knowing about how the salmon run and everything that happens there. So maybe we're going to have to do this again sometime, Sean. But Kendall, at this point, we will open it up to questions.
Great, thank you. For those who would like to submit some questions, you can do that in your control panel under the questions field. Okay, first question. You mentioned early on in the presentation, and there were a few people who just wanted a clarification here. What's the difference between a state refuge and a state sanctuary?
State refuge and a state sanctuary.
Maybe it's interchangeable.
Refuge, well, actually, refuge, from what I know, is a federal. So we have Katmai Bay Wilderness Area that could be a part of a refuge that is federally managed. I am trying to think as we say this if I know of a state managed refuge, and here in Alaska, maybe I'm missing one, but typically the refuge is a federally managed area that is set aside for science. Yes, some tourism can happen there, but it doesn't operate the same way that a park does. It could also have sustainable fisheries or hunting or something like that can happen sometimes in a refuge area. I think the first refuge that we had in our country was Ding Darling in Florida, and that kind of started the refuge system. The state sanctuary is an area that has been set aside for research. A very small amount of tourism can happen there, and McNeil is a quite unique place in that sense. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to be researching, Kendall, after this, if there is a state refuge system.
Okay,
I don't think there is.
The surrounding area around McNeil, I believe, is labeled a state refuge.
Okay.
But the sanctuary itself is really the kind of the special abnormality. It's different in many ways.
So that makes me, this person might be referring to the map that we had at the beginning. And again, I haven't been over to McNeil personally, but typically refuge, relative to wilderness, has different land use rules. than sanctuary. So whether it's federal or state, and clearly we have them in the state, there's a different thing you can do there relative to hunting, fishing, and tourism and whatnot.
Great. And are there any predictions on when the next big eruption will occur?
Ooh. I haven't seen any predictions. I might be in denial of wanting to look at those just because they are so close. Oh, you can see this picture. This is, Sean took this incredible picture of this wolf in Katmai, and I've got it right behind me here. It was an awesome gift that he sent me. Thank you for that, Sean. We have earthquakes all the time. And so as far as that eruption goes, I do believe there's predictions that we will have another one with Augustine or Redoubt and then some others around the state, but I don't know the exact details on that.
When I guide in Yellowstone, I remind everyone that we're about 10,000 years past due for the next eruption there. So it's always comforting.
And do you know if the ash from Novarupta affected the globe's climate like Krakatoa did?
It did. I don't know.
It would be hard for me to believe that it didn't.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics as far as globally, but again, it was a size of an eruption that we've never seen or experienced, and of course, not all the history is like we record history now, but that size, it was felt. I know that the books say it was felt globally.
Okay. Is there an estimate of how many bears there are on Katmai?
I can't remember the last number. I believe just in the Katmai coast or park area, I believe they are estimating around 7,000.
Wow. All right, I'm going to combine a couple. When you're visiting Alaska with NatHab, 1, how close do you get to the bears? 2, when do we visit Katmai? When does NatHab go? And what's your favorite time of year?
So as far as proximity,
I'm gonna let you take that, Sean.
As far as proximity to the bears, that's the bear's choice always. I don't let them get within a couple of feet of us. So that'll be my choice if they continue to come up close. But their behavior is dictated by them. We sit down in places where I know they're going to be near us, and then they get to choose how close they want to come. So it could be a matter of a few yards at times, which is pretty special. NatHab guides from the middle or late June all the way to the middle of September on the Katmai coast. And as far as favorite time, every guide can't make a choice. There are differences during that time period. The bears and the cubs that are out there right at the beginning in June and July are eating the sedge in Hallow Bay, which is where we spend a lot of our time, and that's very special to see all the cubs there in the grasslands. Later in the year is when the salmon start running, and it's a whole nother different time and period and behavior. You just can't choose. It's all special. It's different at different times, but very special, and I still don't have an answer.
Just another reason to keep coming back, right?
Right.
And as far as protection goes, what do guides carry?
So we don't carry guns. We don't, at times we may have some bear spray, but really all we carry as far as protection is what's a boat flare. And what that is it's kind of like a road flare, but all it is a very bright kind of little fireball that we hold in our hand. And that's all we ever needed. And to be honest with you, I've never used one on a bear. I had to use one on a wolf once, and that was it. So the reason that's all we need is it's something that they never see. So if there was some behavior that I needed to protect us from, I would use that flare. And as soon as they see that, it's like I said before, they do their own risk assessment. Whoa, I've never seen this, a human with a ball of fire in their hand. And I'm gonna back away and I'm gonna protect myself. That's what the bear does. And then the moment is diffused. Again, 14 years, I've never used bear spray, and I've never used a boat flare.
And you know, Sean, I just add to that I would say the protection that we bring is our attitude and the way that we approach the area. And that's why we haven't had to use further means, because when we behave in a predictable manner, then the bears can count on that, and then they know what to do around us. If we start to behave in an unpredictable manner, different from the ways that people have been moving through the heart of Katmai for years, that's when you could run into a dangerous situation. So I really think it's what we bring to the place, that calm attitude that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, it's our behavior is really what keeps us safe, and again, that respect for them, that they're allowing us to walk into their kitchen and sit down and watch them. Great.
Well, you've certainly generated a lot of excitement for people to travel here. People who've joined us today have, many have already gone with us to Alaska, and many haven't been, and some people have a trip planned for next year. So thank you so much for being with us today. I want to hand things back to you for some closing comments. So we'll start with Sean.
Well, first of all, thank you for joining us. It's exciting to talk to people. 1 hour is short. I could go on for hours and hours, which is probably the hardest part of this. But what's exciting is hopefully some people that watch this today are excited to get up there and visit and hang out with me. It's the best time you can have. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for yeah, and thanks to Annie. She's been great.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thanks folks for being here. I love that you're tuning in, and I think I was working on a training session yesterday with the guides, and I realized that you all are doing like a master's class in traveling the world and understanding these ecosystems. So I think collectively it's pretty incredible that you're joining for these. Next week, I will be doing the Heart of Yellowstone. And as Sean mentioned, there's some things happening there that are quite interesting. So Corbin will be joining me again. And thank you, Kendall, for helping with this. And Sean, it's just been an absolute pleasure. It's always fun to talk with you, but especially to get to talk with you about bears. And I can't express enough the gratitude for you joining us when you just came out of 2 weeks working in the field. And so thank you for all of that. And with that, I think we'll be ready to go.
All right, well, thanks again, guys. And my thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the magnificent beasts of India. So be sure to join us for that. We did record today's presentation, so we'll have that replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks again, Sean and Annie.
Thanks.
Bye.